Hello, grade 4. Today we will talk about the last part in lesson 4, the importance of sunlight to living organisms. Okay, we will start dividing the living organisms into three types. The first one is called producers. The second one is called consumers. And the third one is called decomposers. So again, we will divide the living organisms into three types: producers, consumers, and decomposers. We will start with what is the meaning of producers. Producers are living organisms that make their food by themselves through the photosynthesis process. Again, producers, they are the living organisms that can make their food by themselves. We said before that plants are the only living organisms that can make their food by themselves, as they have chloroplasts, and the chloroplasts absorb the sunlight. Then they can make the photosynthesis process, so they can make their food by themselves. So only the plants can make their food by themselves. So again, producers are the living organisms that can make their food by themselves by the photosynthesis process. Okay, now what are the examples of producers? Sure, you know now that the examples of producers are green plants, as we said now, algae, and some types of bacteria. Okay, green plants, all of you know the green plants. They are the important example of producers. And algae are watery plants. It's a type of plants. We can find it in only water. Okay, so it's also plants. So don't forget that all the producers are plants and some types of bacteria. Then let's talk about the second type of living organisms, which is called consumers. Who are the consumers? Consumers are living organisms that depend on another living organisms to get their food. Again, consumers can't make their food by themselves, because we said before that producers are the only living organisms that can make their food by themselves. So consumers can't make their food by themselves. So how do they get their food? They get their food from another living organisms. Examples for consumers like lions, cows, and cats. These are examples for consumers. For example, we have lions. Why did we say that lions are consumers? If we looked here, we will find that lions get their food from another living organisms like zebra or deer. So they depend on another living organisms. So lions are consumers. Let's talk about cows. Cows here get their food by or from plants. So they depend on another living organisms. It's plants, yes, to get their food. So cows are consumers. What about cats? Cats get their food from the fish, for example. So they depend on fish to get the food. So they depend on another living organisms to get their food. So here, these are examples for consumers who depend on another living organisms to get their food. So all the animals are consumers, as all the animals depend on another living organisms to get their food. They depend on plants or they depend on another animals. Okay. Now let's talk about the third type of living organisms, which is called decomposers. Decomposers. What is the meaning of decomposers? Decomposers also are living organisms that can't make their food by themselves, like the consumers, but they get their food by decomposing or analyzing the organic wastes, or we can say dead bodies. Dead bodies. Again, decomposers are living organisms. They can't make their food by themselves. Okay? How did they get their food? They get their food by decomposing or analyzing the dead bodies. They feed on dead bodies, or we can say organic wastes. Organic wastes or dead bodies. Okay, did you think before, after death, where did the dead bodies go? Or how did the dead bodies disappear? After death, all the meat and the bones of dead bodies disappear, and only small pieces of bones remain. How? How did that happen? That happened because there are very small living organisms are called decomposers. They feed on these dead bodies. So the decomposers are very small living organisms which feed on the dead bodies. The examples of decomposers are some types of bacteria and some fungi. Okay? Okay. This is the fungi which causes the bread mold, and this is the fungi which causes the orange mold. Okay, what will happen if there were no decomposer? I want you to imagine what will happen if there were no decomposer. If there were no decomposers, no living organisms will feed on dead bodies. The number of dead bodies will increase, and we will not be able to get rid of all these dead bodies, so the diseases will increase too. And we use these decomposers, or some types of these decomposers, like some types of bacteria, in some industries. So some types of industries will disappear, as there will be no decomposers. So now you know that the decomposers are so important in our life. So what is the importance of decomposers in our life? The first thing, they help us to get rid of dead bodies. Get rid of dead bodies. And number two, they increase the fertility of soil. Increase the fertility of soil. Number three, they are used in a lot of industries like yogurt. To make yogurt, we use some types of useful bacteria, and this bacteria is considered a type of decomposers. So we use decomposers to make to make a lot of industries like yogurt. Okay, now let's compare between the three types of living organisms together: producers, consumers, and decomposers. We said that producers are living organisms that make their food by themselves. They are the only living organisms that can make their food by themselves, like plants. Number two, consumers. We said they can't make their food by themselves, but they get the food from another living organisms, or they depend on another living organisms to get their food, like the animals. And decomposers, they can't also make their food by themselves, so they get their food by decomposing the organic wastes or the dead bodies. They feed on the dead bodies, like some types of bacteria. Now I want to ask you a question. Okay, Humans are what? Which type of those? We as humans are producers, consumers, or decomposers. Humans are what? Let's think together. We can make our food by ourselves, like producers, like plants. No, plants are the only living organisms that can make their food by themselves, as they are the only living organisms that have chloroplasts, and they are the only living organisms that can make photosynthesis process. So we can't make our food by ourselves, so we are not producers. Okay. Humans are decomposers as they feed on dead bodies. We as humans, we feed on the dead bodies? Sure no. We don't feed on dead bodies. So we are not decomposers. Okay, let's think about consumers. We can't make our food by ourselves like consumers. Yes, we can't. Okay. We depend on another living organisms to get our food. So we feed on another living organisms. Yes, we feed on plants and we feed on animals. We feed on plants and we feed on animals. So we depend on plants to get our food and we depend on animals to get our food. So we are consumers. We are consumers as we depend on another living organisms to get our food. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much, Grade 4, for watching, and I'll see you next video, inshallah. Bye.